Thank you so much, Emily Chen, for your time today and meeting with me. I'm really excited for this conversation. We met through Neurodiversity Space, and I'm a huge fan of your YouTubes. I would like to get started by having you introduce yourself to the audience and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Emily Chen again. I am the creator and host of Disorient, which is my YouTube series on Asian American mental health, neurodiversity, and representation. And I made this YouTube series because I got diagnosed with ADHD in 2019. And at that time, I was really curious, not just about what ADHD is in general, but how does my being Asian American um, affect my life with ADHD? And I love looking up everything on Google and getting really deep into research rabbit holes, but I couldn't find anything on Asian American folks with ADHD or, you know, who are neurodivergent. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I wish something like this existed because, I was actually stuck on the couch watching YouTube videos all the time.
Mhm.
Like help, like my ADHD hyperfocus, I'm watching all these YouTube videos, but I can't find content that, really resonates with me. So then the pandemic hit and I was like, oh, cool. Now I can't do anything. So I'm going to make this YouTube channel. And yeah, so really it's kind of geared towards the Asian American community because a lot of people in the Asian American community don't know much at all about mental health, let alone um, neurodivergent ways of being. So I want to introduce both, how do we work towards mental wellness and how do we be understanding and accepting and supportive of neurodivergent people in our Asian American community and beyond. So it's all pretty introductory stuff. And, I think just having an Asian person saying the things and taking into account different cultural aspects of it, like, our the collectivism in our Asian cultures, or the importance of saving face and that kind of thing. Taking
Mhm.
that into account to help um, Asian Americans better understand these things and help us be healthier as a community.
I think it's something that's definitely needed, having this outreach, but maybe some of our viewers aren't aware of the conflicts, I guess, within the Asian community about mental health or about neurodiversity. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe could you kind of give us a background on why is this a difficult topic within the Asian community?
Yeah. So, in my like Chinese, Taiwanese heritage culture, it's really, really, really not a thing to talk about how you're feeling, your emotions, especially if you're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think saving face and putting on your best front is really valued. So that makes it hard to talk about, if you're having mental health struggles or,
Mm-hmm.
I had ADHD and I just learned to not talk about anything I was struggling with. So that plus also, I think there just isn't as much awareness or respect for, um, neuro neurodivergent conditions and just disability in general in Asian cultures.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the default is try harder to be perfect
Mm-hmm.
and 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 then we don't even know that supports exist, like therapy for mental illness or accommodations for ADHD and mental health conditions.
Mhm.
So yeah, that makes it so that we don't we're not really inclined to seek help. And then um, you put Asian Americans, and it's not just immigrants, it's people like me who are children of immigrants, people more generations down who, either we don't understand, we don't even know about the resources available to us in terms of treatments and support
Mhm.
in, like therapy and accommodations and services and all the things that can help. Um, we either don't know or we might know about it, but it's so stigmatized that we're like, oh no, I would never do that. There's nothing wrong with me. I know, because if I did that, that'd mean I'm a messed up bad person.
Yeah, and I think, in general, our culture has kind of a stigma with mental health anyway, and it's
Right.
just now starting to
Hmm.
change because people are not as embarrassed about it, or they feel like they need to come out and talk about it. Especially celebrities are bringing light to, so many
Yeah.
different mental health issues. But I think what you're saying is that on top of just our general societal, like, taboo, you have
Yeah.
a different
Right.
layer on top of that within the Asian community.
Yes.
Is that I've heard that Asian cultures are more collective, more group oriented than American culture, which is very individualistic.
Yeah.
So is it like a fear of letting down your family? Um, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I think even for me, when I started going to counseling because I really needed it in college, I was terrified of anybody, any student at my college seeing me walking to the counseling center. And my family was a couple states away, and these people didn't even know me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I do not want to be seen because I could be a dishonor to my family." Like, it's that strong. You know,
Hmm.
it's there's such big value on upholding your family's honor,
Hmm.
that, seeking help becomes almost impossible at
Yeah.
times. And, even if the family knows about it, like, oftentimes they're just going to keep hush hush and not tell anybody
Hmm.
else outside the family. So yes, there's the American stigma, and then there's like this huge stigma from the Asian community and cultures on top of that. So it just
Hmm.
makes things very, very, very difficult.
And so you were diagnosed in 2019.
Mhm.
Did you immediately tell your family, or was that kind of, were you scared to tell your family? How did that conversation happen?
Yeah, I was scared to tell my family, because ADHD is very, very hereditary. So, I spent so much time and energy being like, how am I going to tell my parents and be like, hey, without, in a way that they could maybe start to understand it. Um, and so I think what I ended up doing was I ended up printing out like in an info sheet about ADHD and giving it to my parents. Like, I was just like, I can't even say it to you. Here, read this. Read the like DSM criteria. So like it was hard, and it took a while, like, to get to a point where it's like, oh, I can maybe sometimes talk about my ADHD,
Hmm.
um because, I think I'd become so sensitive to, um you know having any part of my ADHD be attacked in a way that did not really understand what it is. Like, oh, like you're just not trying hard enough, or, you're so smart, why can't you do this? Or you must not care, those moralistic things that it's not, that's not what it is, but people believe that because ADHD is really hard to understand.
It is, and there's some work going on in the neighborhood. So if you hear background
Yeah.
noise, that's what it is. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a lot of noise happening. But I think that, telling other people our stories, or telling about our whole selves, is often difficult. And then
Yeah.
with family, we're expected to be open and have them understand, but they may not understand if their cultures aren't aligned with these new thoughts, which are actually new to everyone.
Yeah.
Neurodiversity is pretty new. And when I was younger, it was considered, just a thing boys had. And
Oh yeah.
boys
Yeah.
are just more energetic, or they can't listen
Hmm.
and they can't sit still. It wasn't considered something that women would have, or that women would, even be diagnosed with, because girls we present differently. We're quieter. We're not
Yes.
as obvious to teachers
Hmm.
or adults. So when you received the diagnosis yourself, did you think um, that really suits the struggle I've been going through, or were you like, there's no way, this is something that is wrong, I didn't, this diagnosis isn't right?
Yeah, so actually the first neuropsychologist I went to was like, I don't think you have ADHD. I think you only have executive dysfunction, because actually I couldn't remember most of my childhood because I was so stressed from just trying to keep up. Um, and, I think part of that was like, being a woman and
Mm-hmm.
being very motivated to be like, I want to do well, and I want to fit in, and I want to um, do what I'm supposed to be doing. So then I actually went to a second neuropsychologist who was a woman and did see the ADHD in me. Um, and yeah, but I think, you know, the whole time, like, I had read all of the diagnostic criteria. I'd been like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, is that why I'm like this? Is that why this happened? And that and that and that? Like, I did really resonate with it. It took a little while because I had to decide to be honest with myself, because I'd been trying so hard to tune out the fact that these things were happening. I was
Yeah.
trying so hard to be put together and, you know, have things together. Um, but yeah, when I was like, okay, I'm going to be honest with myself, it's like, oh
Mm-hmm.
gosh, it's rampant. It's all over the place. Um, and so yeah, like I think it does it does make it difficult, because I think for um Asian Americans, at least, the Taiwanese culture part of it, like there is such big value in obeying your teachers, your elders, your parents, anyone who is, above me, that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in addition to, I think, just being a woman, an American woman, and like, oh, I need to be good. There's also the added layer of I am, I, Chinese filial piety. I need to obey and be
Mm-hmm.
good. So it was just so many levels that, there were huge consequences to not being good. So I did everything in my power to stay within the lines. And so
Mm-hmm.
I hid my ADHD as long as I could.
It's that mask that we put on and try to fit in. It wears you down,
Yeah.
emotionally. And but I'm happy that you were able to get diagnosed, and that you talk about it now. And So with the YouTube channel and the different videos you do,
Mhm.
all based on mental health or neurodiversity, how do you do outreach? How do you get your information out to the community you're trying to serve?
Yeah, I think I've chosen so far to do very community-based, targeted
Mhm.
outreach. So what I like to do, like the reason I made these videos was so that the culturally attuned information could just all be in one place for people who need it.
Mhm.
So I have sent it to friends and family or, people's connections when they're like, "Oh, like so and so is struggling with this or that or that." I'm like, "Hey, I think this might help. Check it out." And I've been pretty involved in the Asian American mental health community in the Boston area. So the organization Asian Women for Health has an Asian American mental health forum each year that I'm actually co-chairing this year. Um, and but they do a lot of mostly local, um, community outreach efforts. So I've been pretty involved with them. But I think beyond that, you know, haven't gotten stuff too out there yet because, um, well, first of all, ADHD. It's hard to keep things together sometimes. um, and also like, I think, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I assume that people
Well, you're doing
dig a
really
lot.
well. Yeah, you're doing really well for word of mouth only.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's great. And like you said, the mental health community in Boston has been a supporter.
Yeah.
So that's really great. And what are some of the things that you want our audience today to take away from this conversation? What do you have any homework or asks for people?
Yeah. I think my biggest ask is that you hold in your mind that neurodivergent Asian Americans exist.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and so not just Asian Americans with ADHD, but with autism and all the other, Tourette's, bipolar, the whole shebang. Um, that they exist and that they have stories to tell. I can't point you to a ton of other neurodivergent Asian Americans because I think we're multiply marginalized. The Asian American community struggles to have places where they can use their voices a lot of the time. So does the
Mhm.
neurodivergent community. And so that intersection of Asian American and neurodivergent makes it really hard for neurodivergent Asian Americans to have a place where they can tell their stories. So know that they exist. And if you come across someone who is Asian American and neurodivergent, me or anyone else, I hope you can listen to their stories and learn from their stories. And if you come across, you know, a some moment in your life where that that knowledge of their stories can inform how you might support someone in a more helpful way, it can make a huge difference in people's lives.
Mhm.
But listening is really hard. It takes time and energy and attention and thoughtfulness. Um, so I don't think it's yeah, I don't think you need to be like, I'm going to like go reach out to this organization or donate this money or whatever. Like I think it's in a way simpler than that, but in a way more difficult.
Mhm.
Because it involves having an open mind and being willing to listen to someone whose experiences might be very different from yours. And being humble about what you do and don't know.
I think that's great. Yeah, I think, after we've been talking about neurodiversity, and, it's a term that it's an umbrella, and it touches so many aspects of just diversity in general. And
Yeah.
I feel like the Asian community is one piece of that puzzle that's often left out of the
Hmm.
conversation. And it's really important to not make assumptions or to have stereotypes about what you think someone else should be like, and to ask questions if you don't understand. I'm a really big believer in asking questions. Just ask me. I'm not going to be
Yeah.
offended. Just ask, right?
Yeah.
Emily, how can our viewers follow you on the socials?
Yeah, I am on LinkedIn. I'm updating it because last time I updated it was in 2016. So I am on LinkedIn working on that. You can check out my YouTube channel, which is where all the Disorient videos are. I have a website that has a list of my Disorient videos in a prettier, more accessible format. And
Okay.
I am also on Instagram and Facebook as um, Disorient. I don't remember the actual handle.
Okay. Yeah, we can link all of your socials in the comments section of the video, and people can follow you there. And
Awesome.
one more question. Do you have a favorite book you'd like to recommend?
Oh, oh boy. Um, oh goodness gracious. Ha! What book? Oh gosh. It's like book, like what's your favorite book and what's your favorite song? And it's just like forget
Oh,
about
yeah,
it. Like
it's
I
too many.
don't even know.
Too many.
I'm just like going through all of my books in my brain right now. Um, oh gosh. No, I don't even know. I'm thinking I'm in ADHD literature land right now.
Mm,
My brain is. There's so many good books in that space.
mhm.
I can't even begin to um and they're like new ones coming out. Like so many people are doing
Mhm.
such great work in the ADHD world. Just check out what those people are doing. Like it's so cool.
Yeah, there's so many new books. There's a book called Neurodiversity at Work, which is just brilliant. I have a copy of it that I have highlighted almost the whole thing because
I need
it's
to
got
check
so
that one out.
much.
I have not checked that one out.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, I'd love to hear your opinion on it if you have a chance to read it. It would be great. Well, thank you so much, Emily. We'll link all of your socials below, and we really appreciated your time today. And I had fun getting to know you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.